And now, your feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled movie review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, having a cup of tea, talking to my best friend, talking about a great movie. There's before and after Yang, and the
Nothing
world
will be
will
the
never
same.
be the same.
Yes, today we are reviewing Kogonada's After Yang, starring Colin Farrell, Jodie Turner-Smith, Justin H. Min, Malea, Emma, Haley Lou Richardson, and more.
Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly.
Um,
I'm just gonna quickly correct you on the one
oh,
name
please.
for Mika. So, Mei Lee Emma
Oh, okay.
Tjandrawidjaja,
Oh,
who is
cool.
really wonderful.
Oh,
As
her
the
full name. Okay, sorry,
yes,
my bad. My
yeah,
bad. Thank you.
yeah, who's really wonderful as the daughter in the movie. So yeah,
Oh, she's great. She's
yeah.
phenomenal. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this with you, man, because like what a wonderful kind of hypnotic, beautiful movie. I liked Columbus enough when it came out. Another movie that felt kind of hypnotic and beautiful in its own way, but um Kogonada is, I've seen a lot of his kind of video essays that he did, and I remember those always being, very short, like couple minutes long. Some are a little bit longer, but those always be very visually stunning and just showcasing a different technique or aspect from different filmmakers. And it's so cool to see him making, his own films and just absolutely crushing it. And he also has Pachinko that's either out right now or soon on Apple TV Plus. He's directed a few episodes of those. March 25th, that's coming out. But Eric, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm actually really happy to talk about this movie because it's just, to your point, like it's Coconada, it's Columbus, which I really, really loved watching at the Lightbox,
Yep, same.
and
Yep.
being completely immersed in a world that is obviously contemporary and set in the present, but also both feature length debut and sophomore effort do share more than you would think, having obviously Haley Lee Richardson in a supporting role in After Yang and being the lead in or co-lead in Columbus, but also the way that he composes a shot, whether it be in medium or wide, and there's barely any movement in the frame, and the movement is based on either the edit to the next angle or the next shot, or the actors moving within the frame. Now, there is
Hmm.
some movement in this movie in the sense that you're getting a point of view, a
Hmm.
perspective, and that's where the
Yeah.
camera does move a little bit more. But when you're in this not too distant future, you're completely immersed in the lives of this family of four, having to deal with the loss of one of them and coming to terms in a kind of introspective nature. And you have Colin Farrell giving, I think, one of his best performances and showing incredible range
He's having a
between
good week.
this and the Batman playing the Penguin, and giving a very quiet, nuanced, internalized performance here as a tea shop owner named Jake, who is trying to fix his son played by Justin H. Min, as we learn in kind of in a non-spoon feeding way that this is a world where techno sapiens exist, which are
I
kind
love
of like,
that term.
yeah, they're kind of like replicants, in a way, where they're man-made, but they
They're
have,
androids. Yeah.
yeah, but they have kind of, like, human flesh. They're more realistic than the de-aged Catherine Keener in the Adam Project. And this character Yang, who shuts down in the after the amazing opening credit sequence,
Oh my
where
god,
there's this
one of the an all timer, just so
virtual
good.
dance competition, is incredible. But he's brought into the family because their adopted Chinese American daughter, it needs kind of a companion to kind of help her kind of understand her culture and her heritage, and kind of let her know that she's accepted within the world. There's a wonderful kind of metaphor about grafting that's brought in later on that I think really works quite well. But it's kind of this family dealing with this character with Yang shutting down and making the decisions of like, can we repair him? Can we not repair him? Who do we go to? What do we do? How do we talk to our daughter? How do we be more present as parents in life because they've been relying so heavily on
On him.
Yang? It is such a beautiful, well constructed, immersive experience that is never emotionally manipulative, but gets you by the end. And when you start to understand the loss that both Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith's characters have gone through as parents,
Mhm.
it hits you in such
Oh, no.
a profound and poignant manner. Like even the way it like this does a better job of looking at the other than something like Don't Look Up, which the whole point of Don't Look Up is, we need to put our differences aside in order to tackle something that's
Sure.
horrific, but we can also sympathize with someone we don't agree with. That movie fails horribly. This has a moment of that could get lost on the first watch, where you have Colin Farrell's character take his boy to this kind of off the books technician played by Richie Coster, who's probably best known as playing the one gangster in The Dark Knight, who kind of wants to use the Joker to sort of bring back the mob, and then
Right,
gets
right,
eaten by the
right.
dogs, right? Because it's like he gets fed by to a
Yeah.
hungry dog. He was also in Matt Reeves' Let Me In. He played the gym coach in that. Really wonderful
It all
actor,
comes back to the Batman.
but yeah, it really does. But he is basically this off the books technician that's also this kind of like conspiracy theorist, kind of
Yeah.
very pro-American kind of guy that suspects that there might be spyware
Surveillance,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, but the way in which it handles that character, it shows you his downfalls and why he probably is,
Yeah.
he's a very talented technician, but why he is basically, having to run kind of like a black market, flea market kind of thing on the side, and not actually have a job where he could probably be in a higher position and helping his own family because of his beliefs and his ideology. And it never makes fun or overemphasizes it, but you could see it. And like there's a great moment between those two in their last scene as well. And I think it's a movie that's very much about empathy. There's a really wonderful recollection of when Farrell is teaching his trade to Yang about tea, and does a Werner Herzog impression, which is
Oh, yeah, it's
delightful.
great, yeah.
So yeah, again, Farrell doing De Niro in the Batman and Werner Herzog in After
That's
Yang.
so good.
It's such a beautiful movie, and I don't want to get too much into Haley Lou
Yeah.
Richardson's character, but
Yeah.
she is amazing in this
She's
movie as
great.
well, and brings in this other side of Yang, but also the world, and there's a little bit of mystery there, and I honestly do think that this is a film that is very much about the experience. Like you're settling into a world that's paced deliberately, that has a certain
And just
atmosphere to
life,
it.
man.
Yeah, and the technology isn't too advanced where it's unbelievable, or you have to have it explained to you. Like you can understand it easily.
I think it's one of the best AI, robot stories that I've seen in a very long time. And I know people are using the term like, human in this. And I think that's really interesting, of showing the human experience.
You love the
And
humans.
yeah, I do love the humans, also A24, but and
And on
Showtime, which
Showtime.
is this, yeah, which this is as well. But I just think that this was such a wonderful movie about grief, about life, about memories, about, you know, love, about like so many different things, and using the framing device of a AI, or, an android, that shuts down as that, I think is so wonderful, and how you can experience, his memories and his life, and see how, we've had many stories about, robots becoming sentient or having feelings, and how do you deal with that, whether it's in Westworld, the morality of what you do to some of the things there, or thinking of other recent things of I love the
Ex
term techno
Machina.
ex machina. The term techno sapiens, it means like, just like Homo sapiens, like they are people. They might be artificially created, and they're everything is kind of fake because it's in their algorithm. But what does that actually mean? Like, sure, they're programmed, but can they eventually develop feelings and experience life just like we would? And using the term, this movie feels very human about the human experience, I think is so interesting, using a robot to show that. And I think the movie, yeah, like you said, the cinematography, absolutely stunning and gorgeous and simple, but like, he just, you can tell from his video essays that he's a very, he analyzes this stuff, and
He's
it
so
seems
meticulous.
meticulous. And the architecture in Columbus, and then in this, just the visual look of everything. Like, I loved the use of aspect ratios. Again, like, I am such a sucker for thematically, like, using aspect ratios in a thematic way of a storytelling device, right? Whether it's the present is in 239 widescreen, the flashbacks or memories are in 16:9, 1.85, like full screen. And then you have these video calls like Eric and I are doing right now, where the characters are in their, where they are. You would see my background just like you see now, but they're talking to the camera like they're having a video call with someone, and they're in 4:3. And it's even little
And
things
you
like
don't
that.
see the device that they're
And
using either, which I thought was kind of
oh, it's
interesting.
great because it's just like, it's immersive, right? Like, you would just be seeing the person in their element, like they're sitting in front of you. But the way that he frames that in that 4:3, and I'm such a sucker for that kind of stuff. And you can tell that, like, storytelling in the filmmaking as well, not only in what these characters are going through and the loss they're experiencing and things like that, but you can tell he is so meticulous that it's every frame is planned. And like, it's just such a mesmerizing movie. And I say this in both Columbus and this film, where they almost put me to sleep. And I don't mean that in like a as a negative at all, because I found them so hypnotizing, both movies, one seeing at Lightbox and one that I watched from my bed. And both were great experiences. I would have loved to see this at Lightbox as well, which I believe it's playing right
Yeah, it
now
is.
at
Yes.
Lightbox.
Yeah.
But he just has this hypnotic quality that you're just mesmerized by everyone in the film, whether Mika, the little girl's experience, or, you like you said, a very subtle but like wonderful performance from Colin Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith, and like even Justin H. Min as Yang himself. He's like,
Who's a composite character, and that's
yeah,
really hard to pull off when you're basically your whole performance or your whole identity is based on other people's memories of you, or getting snippets in this case of what you recorded, and those other people kind of filling in the blanks. And so
yeah,
for him to create such a fully realized individual out of that
with
is,
such little actual screen time and
it's
stuff too.
amazing,
It's
because you
like,
do
yeah,
feel the loss that these characters are feeling in such an earnest and honest way that feels realistic. It doesn't feel like there's any histrionics or any over the top melodrama of these characters being put in a position, or there isn't any added plot in order to like fill out the story. It's just kind of characters like in this moment of time figuring out, okay, well, they really weren't prepared for this, and nobody really is.
mhm.
And what do they do, and how do they kind of take those steps as a family, and how do they talk to each other about it, and how do they reflect on what is going on, and how do they mourn, and how do they mourn with others. And there were just so many little beautiful moments. And you mentioned that there's a lot of films, especially in the day and age now that we're in, where AI technology is becoming more accessible and also a part of our lives. The thing that's kind of interesting with this as well, another movie obviously that does a lot of that is Spike Jonze's Her. But
Yeah,
what this movie does, and Her does as well, it's not sinister. It's not about
no,
a dystopian like Terminator-esque world
like
where
they're going to kill us or
yeah,
or
the
anything like that.
androids are rebelling, the technosapiens are moving on. But there is an interesting line of dialogue that is mentioned about, like, well, why do humans automatically compare us to other to humans? Like, why do we
Yeah,
have to be human? And like, there's
that's
an
exactly,
interesting point
yeah.
being made there.
And that's why I think this movie is fascinating, because that's exactly what I think it's saying. You're going, okay, what if we could access all of our memories, and someone view them and have our whole life be shown? And then, yeah, that whole quote that you just said, I think it is such an interesting thing to tackle. The movie just does such a fantastic job at just kind of, yeah, living through it. And yeah, everyone, we didn't even mention like Clifton Collins Jr. pops up in a very small role,
Who's
and
the
like
next door neighbor, but there's
um
a lot of interesting stuff there because he's the
yeah.
one that wants to be friends with Colin Farrell's character and also
Hmm.
offers him the Richie Coster
Hmm.
technician to go
Yeah.
to. But there's something interesting there in terms of adding a little bit of development to Colin Farrell's character, that Colin Farrell, even though he's a decent person, there is that elitism there where Farrell kind of feels like he's above
Yeah.
Clifton Collins character, who you kind of get as like your classic, almost like red-blooded American type, who's kind of like
Hmm.
into very populous things, whether it be sports or stuff
And
like that.
even the stuff with his daughters is very interesting, which we won't go into, and like with and how the reveals later in the movie that I think played out wonderfully as well. And then talking about, like you said, we're living in an age where this stuff becomes, yeah, we don't have live in, androids living with us right now, but like that could be a possibility in the future. But we have Siri and we have, different AIs, and I think even how it touches on that and surveillance and how it does that, or even when it comes to consent of, your life. And even though it's coming from, Yang, who, depending on who you talk to, some people would be like, well, he's just a robot you paid for and he's programmed, like, but then when they go into the museum stuff and wanting to showcase his life in a museum, and that kind of, uh, you know, struggling with if that is an okay thing to do, and them wanting to study techno sapiens as being, real, people essentially. And I think that was even fascinating as well. And just Colin Farrell's kind of journey through this of like, yeah, it was his son and he's experiencing his son's memories and he's struggling with all this stuff of what to do. And it's such a beautiful movie.
Yeah, the score is amazing. I
Oh
think
god, yeah, I've been listening to it nonstop.
the look of the film, not just the cinematography, but
The
the
production
way
design of like the future is so cool.
it's yeah, again, like it's not overwhelming and sort of like, oh, this is a world where you can obviously relate to the people, but you can't relate to the technology and the world building around it. It's very much a future that is probably, like Colin Farrell, when he's talking about that Werner Herzog doc that Herzog is in, that's from 2007. And he says that he saw it in college. So you'd probably assume that like the movie itself would be like, or like the story this is telling is probably like, you know, 2060 or 20, like around
Yeah,
that
not
time.
too
So
far in the future,
no,
but
no, no.
yeah.
And like it feels like, okay, this is the kind of progression people would make. Like it's not flying cars, it's not, teleportation. There's a lot of cultural influences in the architecture and design and clothing, whether it be, Asian American sort of medleys or
The design of their house was so cool, dude.
yeah, it looks it has this kind of beautiful postmodern architecture to it that kind of feels, again, futuristic, but there are a lot of like elements in there that are basically memorable, in that you can understand them, like they come from a real place, like they you could see this somewhere, you could see this house
Oh,
somewhere, like it's
totally.
it's it's not completely um it's not too futuristic, like it's like oh, okay, like I could see people living in this.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just one of those movies that really does take its time to tell a story about a family mourning, and also really getting to know the family, and it doesn't, dump on you with exposition or a lot of backstory that's unnecessary. Like even though it is very well composed and structured, it doesn't ever feel like there's nothing in this movie that didn't need to be in the film. Like everything in this movie is of one kind of piece, and it's just so beautiful to kind of watch. And yeah, watching it on a screener link, I think like you still get a lot out of it, but I could only imagine watching this in like the light box and being completely immersed by the sound design and the
Yeah,
visuals
I'm
and
almost
the
tempted to go see it
performances.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful movie. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I think it's up there with, I mean, we're very early in the year, but like, that and Colin Farrell just having a great couple weeks, because this and the Batman, like a 1-2 punch of those, they're just so different.
Yeah.
But
And he
two
still
very,
has two
very
more
good
movies
movies.
coming up with Ron
Yeah.
Howard and Martin McDonagh. So like I think he's gonna have a really good year
Yeah.
overall.
So 4.5 from me. I loved
I
it.
gave it a 4 on Letterbox, but I'm gonna bump it up to a 4.5 on here because it's
Love
just one
that.
of those movies that, again, like, the more time
Oh, there he's back.
yeah, 4.5. I think the more time that you have distance from it after, like, thinking about it, the more it just kind of stays in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate it, or watching. We have many more reviews you guys can check out right now. You can check out our reviews for The Batman. We have a spoiler-free review right here on this channel, Untitled Movie Reviews, or on YouTube. We also have a spoiler cast on the Untitled Movie Podcast channel, or on YouTube. We also have a review for Domi Shi's Turning Red, which you guys can check out. Mimi Cave's Fresh, which our friend Joey Noel hopped on over and reviewed that
Both
with
on
me.
Disney Plus Canada.
Both on Disney Plus Canada. Also, The Atom Project, if you guys want to check that out. We have a review for that. And much more coming up in the next couple weeks. Best place to find everything, one-stop shop, would be Letterboxd over on our HQ, which is Untitled_movies. You can get all of our ratings, our rankings of things, our video reviews, our podcasts. All of that is over there. So go check that out, Untitled_movies on Letterboxd. Go check out Kogonada's video essays as well. They're all on Vimeo. They're fantastic. If you liked Columbus and you like this, they're sometimes only like 3-4 minutes long, sometimes even shorter. Just kind of visual essays with great music and great visuals. Go check those out. After I watched this, I hopped on and rewatched a bunch of them, and they're just they're very kinetic and exciting and just great analysis without even, some of them have voiceover and stuff like that, but some are just purely music and images, and they're great. So go check those out
And
as
just go back to
well.
see Columbus. Like, you can pick it up on Blu-ray
That
through
Blu-ray is beautiful
Oscilloscope.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a fantastic movie, and I'm just really excited about him moving forward because, I mean, he's only done 2 features, but I honestly feel that he understands what you can do with the art form so beautifully, just as both, someone that loves movies and the visual medium to tell stories, but there's just something that's like even with only the 2 films, like, I want to say that he's going to be one of the best filmmakers of our generation, and, like, I'm
Yeah.
just so excited to see what he's going to do next. So
Yeah. And then Pachinko's out in a couple weeks, which I might check out now because I know he directed, I think, half the episodes. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com and on Family Feud Canada. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
just thinking about the family and After Yang being on Family Feud.
They'd crush it. I think they'd crush it.
Yeah, I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
I'm going to go grab a cup of tea and I'm going to sob quietly like a sad boy.
That tea making scene is great. Dude.
Oh, I had a new profound appreciation for drinking tea after this,
Yeah.
because it was almost like someone like a sommelier, right? Like a wine
Oh my
taste
god,
tester.
when he talks about how you can experience like a place with it, I'm like, I've never thought of that, and that's such a wonderful thing to explain tea. Anyways, bye everybody. Drink some tea.